I'm just going to give the writers a minute to sort of settle in while I thank you for being here. And today we'll be talking to these three amazing writers. One of the things that I found while I was reading their work as I sort of started to prep for this session was it was amazing that all three of them are not writing in any sort of mainstream way, in a way that panders, even in terms of their narrative structures. And so that way, it gives me great pleasure to be on this very, if I can call it that, very feminist panel, even in terms of what they are writing and who they are writing about. So my first question for you guys is, what is the experience of writing taught you about why we write? Which is just a way of asking, why do you write? And how has that felt so far? Can we start with you?
Well, can you hear me? Why do I write? I don't think I ever thought about it. It was sort of an automatic thing. I like what Mexican painter Diego Rivera said about...
You want to hold the mic closer? Yeah.
Oh, is that better?
Yeah.
That's frightening for me, though, to hear my own voice so amplified. The good thing about being a writer is you write in your room and then you don't have to shout into a mic. Otherwise, I would have become a performer of some kind. I began writing as a way of understanding myself, what was happening in my own life. There were external frameworks that were given to me, either by education in school or spiritual teaching. I was raised Muslim, and in a very observant, practicing house. So there were ways that I understood the world that were given to me through the external, answering those three famous questions: who am I? What am I doing here? And why does all this matter? i.e., where am I going next? Those are the questions that every organized religion from ancient times until today has tried to answer, and every political entity has tried to answer, and every form of economy has tried to answer. And writing was a way for me to figure out the answer to those questions for myself, independently of all of the outside noise.
Perfect. What about you, Sabin?
Sorry. Thanks, Krupa. That question is very important because why I write? Two things. One, I have to write about people around me. As a journalist, I feel there are so many things in people that I should write about. That is a commitment. Two, I had in my family life, I had a sort of a challenge, which required me to write, because that writing kept me going. I didn't want to get depressed to, say, okay, this thing happened to me, but I sort of resorted into writing. I created my own world of, writing. So every day I used to write about 1,500 words, good or bad, I didn't care. And I created characters. Characters appeared before me. Honestly, that magic of writing happened. And I kept on writing and kept on being rejected by publishers and agents, and even on and on for years, like about 20 years, And I realized, and I was okay. I'm going to be a unpublished writer. I came to peace with that. Then suddenly, magically, the first one got published. Then all the others are there, and I just had to pull out and send it to different publishers. And people ask me, why you're so prolific? A book a year. It's not a book a year. It's a writing of the last 20 years. It's coming out now, So writing for me is survival, to put it very simple.
Perfect.
So I echo with both Kazim and Sabin. I write to understand the world within me. I write to understand the world around me. And when I look at the world, I see a broken world, but I also see a joyful world. I see the contradictions. I see beauty, I see pain, I see suffering, I see flourishing, there's happiness, sadness. Sometimes I sit with these questions and I don't understand. I don't understand why there's suffering. I don't understand why the world is the way it is. So writing is my way of trying to understand it. I don't get any answers, but it's my way of addressing these questions and understanding it to a certain extent. So while I was writing this book, The Remnants of Rebellion, I myself had a few changes in perspective, major changes in perspective. It was not really black and white anymore for me. I started living in this world of grays. And that was not easy. When the rug is pulled from underneath your feet, it's not easy. When your world perspectives change, it wasn't easy for me. So writing, as you said, it was a way that kept me going. And, to a certain extent, it kept me sane. So, yeah, it is a good question. Why we write? It's all these things and more.
Yeah. Churning is always sort of the at the heart of why somebody resorts to writing, I think. And before we go on with other questions, I thought you guys should hear from the writers what they've written and what this panel is really about. So we'll begin with Ponnu, and we'll sort of hear a short excerpt from each of the writer so that you can make up your mind and go and buy the book later on and meet them
They
for
didn't have to make up
signings
time. They have to
afterwards.
go and buy the book.
All of that is going to happen much later, and there'll be a lot of questions, but I want you to please listen to their work. Yeah.
This book is part historical fiction, part set in the contemporary world. So it's based on, just before I read the exact excerpt, I'll just give a 1-minute intro. So it's inspired by a real life incident from my grandfather's life when he was the superintendent of a rubber estate in Kerala in the 1960s. And this was the rise of the Naxalbari movement in West Bengal, but there was a strong effect in Kerala as well. And there was a death at the estate. The assistant superintendent was stabbed to death. And I have fictionalized the story, and I've also given it a present-day timeline. One timeline follows the life of this grandfather called Isho, and the other follows the life of Eliama, the granddaughter. So I'm going to read a bit from Isho's timeline, which is the 1960s timeline. It is a pretty serious book in many ways, but whenever I do readings, I read the lighter, wittier parts, so I'm going to read one of those. Isho has no time for puerile romance, Mama Molikuti would say whenever relatives dropped by, until she had to swallow her words when Isho brought Kochitresia home. Mama Molikuti could see them from the kitchen window, and at first she was in denial. It cannot be a woman, it just looks like a woman. I am only going blind, and that is better. Mama Molikuti thought she would die if Isho ever left the family for a woman, or worse, brought home a strange woman. No one ever did that sort of thing in their family, and she supposed such acts of impropriety were not meant for an upper caste educated family. Though she was not educated, as her father had never taught her to read and write like he had taught his sons, Mama Molikuti considered her pedigree impeccable. And although she would have bridled at being thought of as progressive, she viewed herself as reasonably modern, since she chose to wear a chatta, unlike her mother, who was more comfortable bearing her upper chest for all the world to see, reserving a delicate torta just for the times she went to church. Mama Molikuti had to warn her mother every time they sat on the floor to cut jackfruits, not to slice her own low-hanging fruits by mistake. A chatta would have held things in their place. Harmless modernity had to be embraced, she believed. But eloping was not modern. It was just wrong and tasteless. It was for little boys who thought they knew better than their mothers. But mothers knew best.
Tales from Kabristan. It is set in a rural backwater village in Kerala. It's very, very much pastoral, very much rural and slow pace and all that. So I was telling Krupa, my books, got 3 novels out, 4th one is coming out now. They are very much put downable. You can put them down anytime. You can pick them up anytime. So I have no tall claims that is very unput downable novel. Sorry. Okay. This begins when Farooq brings his father's dead body to bury in their childhood village in the Kabristan. And it begins and it ends on the same premise. And they come in, the novel begins, and then the novel ends, then he walks back. So I'm going to read from the last portion. And his father was in hospital for 4 days. They were all waiting for his death. But he was not dying. So here we go. Waiting for death, day 4th. Ma had been more than a mother. She was my window to the world and family history. From the childhood days in Kailoram house, through the boyhood days in different rented houses, and in our own house, she had been my encyclopedia. And I had asked her doubts on everything except sex. Her mood swung nastily when the loneliness in her life became unbearable. When her husband for years visited once a year, warmed her lovelorn heart, claimed her intimate passions, and went away, leaving her alone with their children. Because it also deals with migration, the Gulf migration, the women left behind at home. So the mother in this novel is also what I call grass widow, where the husbands are away for a long period. He sent his monthly remittance without fail. She encashed the piece of paper enclosed in the onion-thin papers in which he wrote letters in his incredibly beautiful handwriting and shopped for Shabnam and me. While her husband was in the Gulf, she did not lack money. But once he came back with cancer and his health deteriorating, by the day, she had no money with her, but she endured the lean days with fortitude. I always saluted her optimism. I had grown up getting used to her refrain, Allah will take care of it. She knew there is a God, and that He is faithful. Though her husband literally spoiled her career and made her financially dependent on him, treated her, at least for a while, with the arrogance of male prejudices, she did not lash out at him. Ma suffered him patiently, taking on her chin his chauvinistic selfishness and drunken self-pity, and looked after him with love and care when he was in the last stages of lung cancer. She took him to the washroom, scrubbed him clean, sponged off all the sediments of dirt and sweat. She made sure that he did not stink of the disease and the decay of the flesh. The body that she loved so dearly had lost its romance, its charm. While she was weeping, I wondered whether her tears were because his death was now imminent, or because she had remembered those innumerable hugs and kisses that the body had given her. She must have remembered those nights when he came home lovelorn and sex-starved on vacation from the Gulf, those impatient unfastening of hooks and those fingers running over her flesh. It's funny to think of such things when Pa was on his deathbed. Death can sometimes be funny too. That night, the 3rd night of waiting, no one went home, as we were sure that would happen. Death would show up. Groups of my cousins, uncles, and aunts dragged their flip-flops along the cement corridors, often peeping into other rooms. They drove away sleep with the black tea from the canteen, where a sleepy boy served them, and smoked beedies and cigarettes leaning on the walls of the garage. With 2 of my friends, I walked around the general wards, with some snored loudly, while milky tube light that revealed cement patches on the walls kept some awake. An infant's cry echoed somewhere as its mother tried to calm it down in vain. I'm going to read a little bit, the end, and I'm More relatives came on the morning of the fourth day, and death came after all of them during siesta time. When Pa began to breathe what seemed to all of us his last, Amir uncle, cousins, uncles, and brother-in-law stood around the bed behind Dr. Asif, who did not but watch him breathe. I kept looking at Pa. He was breathing. His breathing was heavy, and each exhalation took longer than the previous one. And each time he breathed in, we all waited for the exhale. It came out slowly, but the intervals grew longer. Each slow breath separated his life from his impending death. We watched on. Somehow, I was thinking of Pa as my English teacher then. He was teaching me the tenses from the books of Brighter Grammar and Essential English, present and past, die, died. I remembered Pa making me write the two words in my notebook. Present continuous, are, is, am, dying. He was acting it out for his son. I am dying. Father is dying. He is dying. Pa is dying. My cousins cried out as there was no exhalation following a noisy inhale. We waited. Seconds ticked. No, there was nothing. Life left Pa. Father died. Simple past.
Thank you, Sabin.
Sorry, I took some time.
Kazim.
Okay. I'm going to read a little excerpt from this book called Indian Winter. It's about the winter in India. No, I wrote it. Actually, it's sort of autobiographical to a point. It is fictionalized, but it tells the story of, and I wanted to read this section in particular in the context of family, because it thinks about the different types of community and family that we create that are not always obvious. And the book tells the story of a writer who has come to India for a book tour, and he's going from city to city throughout the book. And what's happened is that he's just learned of an old lover from his college days, has learned of that lover's death. And the lover is named Michael. And then his own current relationship is in process of breaking up. So he just fled the scene of the crime, as it were, and came to India. And this is the story of one of the dinners that happens after the reading at the festival. In this particular chapter is set in Chennai, so it's after the festival there. So if you ever wondered what happened at those dinners, that's maybe one version of it. There is a dinner after the reading, and one of the other visiting poets, a man named Ardashir, long-limbed and lanky, with a head of impossibly silver curls, chooses me to receive his attention. He sits next to me and monopolizes my conversation the entire night. He has published many books and is a university professor, and it appears he feels he is favoring me. That I should know he is favoring me. That he is doing me a favor by sparing me from having to make conversations with all the others. And frankly, I am actually grateful for it. He keeps me laughing by making biting observations under his breath about each of our table mates. Every time I try to talk to someone else, or someone tries to talk to me, he interrupts. At one point, the ponderous filmmaker on my left, who has been insisting I go to Goa after the festival, once again begins waxing at length about the beaches at Kandalim, and Ardashir somehow senses my eyes glazing over and just takes my shoulder and spins me back towards him physically, his eyes sparkling at my discomfort. Everyone is intent on feeding me, but ever since my dancing days, I haven't liked food very much, and sometimes I have to force myself to eat at all. Still, I am conscious of not wanting to be rude, so I do eat a little bit. The giant Bengali, who is the chair of the Department of Comparative Literature at the Madras University, has had a whiskey or two too many and is feeling ebullient. "You must move to India," he declares. We will hire you on our faculty as a reader in translation. Bengalis, mutters Ardashir out of the side of his mouth, nudging me in the ribs. They can't hold their liquor, I ask. No, he says merrily, they can and do. That's the problem. At the end of the night, exhausted by my unsuccessful effort to decline extra servings without seeming rude, and nearly sick from overeating, I excuse myself to go to another room to just sit and clear my head. Ardashir follows me in, his expression sorrowful. He knows I want to be alone, but still he seeks me out, and in spite of myself, I turn towards him. I had a friend once, he says slowly, his gaze lingering over my face. He was 27. We lived together. His family hated him, and so I took him in. He took drugs. I tried to save him. He walked out into the street. I still don't know if it was because he was high or if he wanted to die. Maybe it was both. When the car hit him, he fell and struck his head. He did not wake up. It's been years, but since that day, nothing in the world gives me any pleasure. A friend, I think, who Ardashir loved, who probably loved him back, like Michael. I look up at Ardashir, not sure what to say, not sure if anything can be said. He looks at me just one moment longer, and then turns and returns to the dining room where the others are standing up, everyone preparing to leave in the waiting cars.
Okay, now that the reading part of it is over, I'm going to sort of try and make this a rapid fire of sorts so that I can rush through all of my questions with you guys. But thank you so much for the beautiful reading, all three of you. Ponnu, if I can come to you. As we've seen, all three books in some way are also about grief, are also about death, are also about dealing with that. And how important is, you think, processing grief in this sort of writing that you're doing, especially in this book that for all three of you, I feel that is at the center of the book. I mean, there's literally, in your book sort of is a beginning, right at the beginning we know that there's been a death. And your book is called Tales from Kabristan, and you're grappling in your book, the characters grappling with the death of a loved one. And so just tell me about what is it about processing grief?
So this book is definitely centered around death and grief, and a lot of other things as well, rebellions as well. So the character of Eliama is trying to process the grief of losing her grandfather, and she can't. And she wants him back so badly. He was the only person that that understood her, who loved her for who she really was. Just love, unconditional love. So she wants him back so badly, and she looks at the universe and asks for signs, sharp signs from the heaven to know that he is still around in some ethereal way. And once you read the book, you'll know whether she gets it or not. But it's something that happened to me as well. So this book is inspired by a real-life incident from my maternal grandfather's life. And while writing the character of Isho, the grandfather, I had both my grandfathers on my mind. And they are no more. They have passed away. And I know that I'll never see them again. And there is the grief that I hold as an author. And in some way, writing the character of Isho was making them live on through the pages.
Perfect.
And so that is how I processed my grief, through Eliama's character.
Perfect. Sabin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so as the title says, Tales from Kabristan, there are a lot of deaths and burials in this book. but primarily it's about how I process the grief of losing my father to lung cancer. So this is I emptied it out onto the pages, and it is kind of healed me my wounds. Yeah, but my earlier book, Shamal Days, reviewers call it a sad book because I don't know. There's a lot of grief in that book. So, but I think when we write and when we take them out of the pages, there's kind of a catharsis. So writing is kind of processing grief in a very effective way.
Perfect. Yeah. Kazim.
I'll just add that I think all writing, in a sense, is an elegy for what is past. It necessarily comes after, and it is one of the best ways to bring the dead back to life, actually.
Beautiful. I'd go back to you, Kazim, again. We'll come back like this. How do you see travel in the context of your fiction? And for me, it was very interesting because the story moves forward as the character moves from one place to another in your novel. And that's such an interesting way of doing your narrative and sort of not doing what they call the phallocentric narrative arc of, rising action, falling action, whatever they teach you in creative writing classes these days. So I wanted to ask you how you see travel, in the context of your writing.
It's so important for me. I mean, this book in particular was a kind of homage to the Italian novelist, a Portuguese-Italian novelist, Antonio Tabucci's book, Indian Nocturne, where he is also traveling around India. In that book, he's trying to catch up with a friend who he has heard is planning on committing suicide. So he's trying to catch his friend, and my narrator is trying to outrun the dead friend, basically, the grief of the dead friend. So it kind of mirrored that notion. And I myself was traveling around India, having my own drama, and it was like a new drama in every city, basically. Some of it was external drama, like I almost got kidnapped by my family members when I was in Hyderabad, which was, you can't make that stuff up. So that's in the book as well, but fictionalized, as we say. And another novel that was really important to me was a not very well-known novel called Nampali Road, which was written by the Kerala-American novelist Mina Alexander. And in that book, the main character, whose name is Meera Kanadikal, she ends up in Hyderabad, and it's sort of like the story of a woman an Indian woman who lived in the U.S. coming to Hyderabad for a year, and there's something about being in the unfamiliar surroundings or being in a new place that you don't belong to, that you may not speak the language, because Meera Kanadikal, the character, is also Malayali, so she doesn't speak Telugu. She's teaching English at the college, and so there's something about that novel, which is a wonderful book if you haven't read it, to read it, that also inspired my book. And in the Hyderabad chapter, there's a character whose name is Meera, who is sort of, based on Meera from Nampali Road.
Yeah. Meera K.
In Meera K. She calls herself Meera K. Yeah.
Right, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, Krupa, all my writings are based on, kind of travel, which is migration. I come from a place called Varkala, but it's a Gulf pocket, in quotes. So most of the men live in the Gulf and work in the Gulf. So I tend to write about them, and the people are left behind, the women mostly. Right. If you go through the cliffhangers, so Shamal Days, or the Tales from Kabristan, you can say travel and displacement is part of my writing. It's a very strong element in my writing, and especially in the Shamal Days, which is set in the Middle East, where I look at a group of migrants from different parts of the world. So travel and migration and displacement has been a very, very prominent feature in my writing, and it keeps me writing.
Right. Ponnu.
So this novel takes the readers through the landscape of Kerala, through the different places in Kerala. It talks about, also, it is a historic novel to a certain extent, because it also talks about, this is set in a Syrian Christian Malayali family.
Right.
So it also traces the history of the community and the places that are relevant to the community and the so-called legends associated with the churches supposed to have been planted by St. Thomas in 52 AD, supposed to have. So it talks about, one of those stories is set in Niranam, which is one of the ancient ports, and that's where, that was a cradle of Christianity. And the other is set in this imaginary town called village or rubber plantation called Pudalur, which is based on a real place, but I didn't want to name the real place, so I've called it Pudalur. And that traces the origin of the plantation culture in Kerala. So this book takes the readers not just on a journey through the different places, but also through different time periods that Kerala has seen.
Right. Which brings me, it's amazing that all of you brought this up. The next question is obviously, but what do you think, or do you think about religion and your place in it while you're writing? It doesn't necessarily have to be this book, but I know that you have sort of, all of you have in some ways dealt with it in your writing, and so I wanted to ask you, can we start with you, Ponnu?
Yeah, so religion is very important to me. Right now, in this stage of life, it's important to me academically. So it's a very interesting question because I am currently pursuing a master's in Christian studies. So that's part of research. It's part of my research for my next book. It's a non-fiction book about the community. So right now I'm looking at it academically, but in this book, as I said, it's not an academic endeavor. It is about the Syrian Christian community. So I have, religion plays a very key role in the story. Not just religion, faith also. Religion needn't always be about faith, right? You know, a person can have faith without religion. Right. So all these things do form a skeleton in the story. And religion, I'm talking about, again, as I said, it talks about the history of the Syrian Christian community as well. It talks about how the different denominations within the religion of Christianity had fights. In 1498, the Portuguese came to Kerala and they encountered a bunch of local Christians. Then they were like, who are these people? They are very different from us. And I'm tracing the conflict that the people had. And I'm also talking about the rise of a different kind of religion that happens in present day, that's mixed with nationalism. So it's very important to me personally as well as in the book.
Great.
Thanks. I look at religion and faith separately because faith is so personal. I don't practice anything, but I have faith. But religion and religious rituals are very good material to write about. And in my the next book that is coming out next month is Calamitous Afternoon. I write about conversions and the problems from bunch of Christians becoming Hindus and all that. So I am trying to address that. So religion is very, very interesting topic to write about. But faith is not. Faith is very, very personal. You know, that's how I look at it.
Great. Kazim.
I don't know if I have religion or faith at this point in my life. I'm someone who was born and raised Muslim and then became a student of yoga and a kind of unofficial disciple, I guess, of Swami Turiya Sangeetananda, better known as Alice Coltrane, the jazz musician. You know, I kind of try to live in the world myself and observe and understand. I engaged a lot in my earlier work, really trying to interrogate spiritual ideas from Islam and from my yoga studies. And then at a certain point, I felt like the more I talked about God or religion, the less I was coming to understand it, because the more I was fixing my ideas and defining my ideas. And Dr. Gian Devi last night said something really smart. He was talking about languages and dialects. And he said, a language is a river, but the dialects are the flowing water. The language is the banks of the river that give it structure and allow it to flow. So I think the banks are probably religion itself, but the water is whatever God is. And I think if you're obsessed with the religion and the practices of the religion, it's like you're just standing on the banks looking at the water. And other than that, other solution is to wade into the water and swim. There's, of course, the danger of drowning, so you have to learn proper strokes. That's in yoga, we say, you learn your practices properly to engage with this power. But if there's anything I believe about religion, that's what it is.
Great. Should we do a round of audience questions now, you think? Or do I have time for one more question? Or 5 minutes, so we'll pass the mic on to the audience.
Thank you for a beautiful session. I happen to be a budding poet. I just published my first book of poetry. So when you read out that elegy, it reminded me of the one I wrote for my dad. It was so touching. I could really feel what he was saying. And I have a common thread with both of you. I'm from Kerala. So my question is related to that. So when you talked about how you wrote and when you read it out, the thought that came to me was how challenging, or whether it was challenging at all for you to appropriate your language and your emotions when you had to express it in the book from your personal life in English without losing the emotional connect you had to the people, the places, the incidents, the political scenario at that time, like you said, what led to that murder, and all the nuances of the regional things, whether it be religion, whatever it be. It can't be like English thoughts.
Yes. Okay.
So how
I think we
challenging
got
it
the
was.
question.
Yeah.
Great
Thank
question. I think we'll get the answer.
So yeah, we were actually just talking about this before the session. Yeah. So I'll quickly say. So for me, I am a person who thinks in English and I dream in English. So I write in English. So it's the most natural way of expressing. But yes, and also I have used Indian English. So English is ours now. We have made it our own. So I have used words like torta and chatta and all these words, but I've not even italicized them. So my editor said, you don't need to do that because it's our own. So for me, that is how I incorporated both the worlds of English and Malayalam and culture.
Yeah, I also think, and write in English, I also think it's very important. And English, as you said, is our language. And I also use a lot of Malayalam words in the diction and narrative. So I don't think it is difficult for us, for me especially, I don't know about them, to write and, to appropriate my feelings and when I write in English. For me, writing, I've been a journalist, in English media. So all my professional thinking, writing, everything in English. So now I've begun to write in Malayalam. That is difficult for me now,
Okay, I think Kazim also wants to say something finally.
Oh, I just wanted to add one thing, because once again we were talking about languages last night, and there was Deepa Basti and Dr. Devi, and one of the comments was made is the language gives you a rhythm of expression that's very different in each language. So for poetry, I think for prose it also matters, but I think for poetry it really matters. And oftentimes you will find a poet or a writer who writes in different languages, say like Kamala Das, who is writing in English and in Malayalam, and the voice of that writer is very different in each of those languages, because the language itself kind of shapes and creates the form of expression. So I find that very interesting. And so certainly the rhythms of Indian English are very different from American or Canadian or British English. It's not only a question of sometimes I'll be speaking with somebody and we don't even understand each other because the expressions or the beat of the sentence or something, and they're not understanding me. So I love that, and I feel like as a writer I want to lean even more into that as much as possible. Whatever the quirks or whatever is non-standard about your own language or your own spoken expression, to lean into that even harder. Now, in the United States, there's a lot of language politics around what kind of English you speak, and if it's proper English or incorrect English, and it's not considered as literary language, that it's almost like it should only be standard English. Then you have a black writer like Zora Neale Hurston, who brought the spoken rhythms of oral black spoken English into the literary language, and other writers, Chicano writers now, who are bringing, so-called Spanglish into as a literary language. And so I wonder what that would, I think the politics around language are extremely different here, probably like a lot more favorable, even though you are dealing with a little bit of, I guess, so-called language supremacy, where they're saying that the northern dialect should be the national language. But I wonder what it would be like because I'm not educated enough in Indian fiction to know those writers that are really leaning into it hard and doing what you're talking about, bringing the other words and expressions into. So I love that.
Right.
The last thing I wanted to add really quickly, though, is my book also, there's a lot of it that's set in Kerala.
Right,
And in
yes.
fact, he's traveling around India,
Yeah,
and then
just
he gets to
Varkala also.
Kerala, and he stops, and he cancels all of his plans. So all of the chapters are like 15, 20 pages long. Then he gets to Kerala, and that one chapter is like 70 pages long, and he stays in Kerala. Then he finally leaves and goes to a couple of other places, but then he goes back. And the last part of the book, the last 40 pages of the book, he's in Kerala again. So I think we're all this is a Kerala panel.
This is, I'm
And
the
Kazim is
honorary
coming to
Kerala
Varkala,
person.
right?
And I'm going tomorrow.
Okay, so go buy their books. They'll be available for signing at this signing place. So please go meet them, say hello, and take your selfies or whatever.
Yeah, much appreciated there.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
guys.
much.
You've been a great audience. Thank you. I wish we had time for more questions. Goodbye.